Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McClain starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. Praise be to God. It is good to be on with you. There's a lot to cover today. Yesterday, we saw that there was a big LifeSite News announcement. John Henry Weston, by a 5-4 vote from the board, is no longer the CEO. We're going to be talking a little bit about this today on the program, maybe even in the after show a little bit. And a source is telling me it's not what's being speculated online. So hopefully we'll get into that more today on the program. But I also want to talk about the Epstein case because justice, where is justice these days, it seems?
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Yes.
This guy's been talked about for years.
He has.
You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy?
Yeah, there is, because, you know, it's an injustice that's crying out for justice. And we're just going to toss it away. There's no victims. Then why was he convicted? Why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison? If there's no client list, if there's no victims, then what are we even talking about? We're going to have Mike McCormick on the team at 14 past the hour. He is the author of An Almost Insurmountable Evil, How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Pandemic. He joins us to weigh in on the Epstein file being dropped, basically. Also on the team today, we're going to be having a conversation with Kennedy Hall. He's got an article over on his Substack, Stop Sending Your Kids to Digital Hell. The effects of giving our kids, you know, these iPads or access to digitally connected devices, internet connected devices. What are the downsides? As parents, we must pay attention to this, and he's going to be talking about that at 30 past the hour. So we have a lot to get to today. I'd be grateful if you would share us with a friend. We'll put links to everything in the show notes at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and now your saint of the day.
Saint Veronica Giuliani, pray for us. Ursula Giuliani was born to a noble Italian family in the year of our Lord 1660. As a child, she demonstrated remarkable piety and love for the poor, though she was often uncharitable to those less fervent than herself, until she was chastised in a vision. Ursula's father tried many times to arrange a marriage, but the girl was so determined to enter a convent that she fell ill until her father gave his permission. At the age of 17, despite temptations to return to her family's comfortable life, Ursula joined a convent of the Capuchin Poor Clares, taking the name Veronica to honor our Lord's Passion. On one early occasion, she received an imprint of a cross upon her heart, and some years later, despite initial fear and reluctance, she accepted the lifelong suffering of the pains of the Passion, including visible and excruciating wounds from the crown of thorns. Despite these deep mystical experiences, Veronica was always obedient to her superiors, and as director of novices and then abbess, she forbade young nuns from reading mystical writings, insisting they prioritize their practical duties, both spiritual and physical. Veronica died in her convent in the year of our Lord 1727. For more about this day and others in the Church's calendar, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints-and-seasons. Saint Veronica Giuliani, pray for us.
And now your headline news. The Daily Wire reports IRS says churches can endorse political candidates. The IRS clarification came in a lawsuit court filing after 2 Texas churches and an association of Christian broadcasters sued seeking an exemption from the ban on churches endorsing political candidates. While the plaintiffs sought a carve-out for all nonprofits, the IRS agreed in a court filing to allow churches to endorse candidates without penalty. According to the IRS, the Johnson Amendment, which has been part of the U.S. tax code since 1954, does not prohibit a church from communicating with its congregants about its preferred political candidates, comparing such endorsements to a family discussion. The Blaze reports AI fraudster impersonates Rubio. President Donald Trump's administration is reportedly battling impersonation campaigns amid warnings that artificial intelligence-powered security threats are becoming increasingly more common. An unknown culprit reportedly used AI to imitate Secretary of State Marco Rubio's voice to contact top officials, according to a cable from the State Department. The individual reportedly used text messaging and Signal to contact at least 5 non-department individuals, including 3 foreign ministers, a U.S. governor, a U.S. member of Congress. Bad actors also impersonated other State Department personnel, according to the federal agency. The Bureau of Diplomatic Security is investigating. And LifeSite News reports John Henry Weston is no longer CEO and editor-in-chief. LifeSite News announces that John Henry Weston is no longer CEO and editor-in-chief following a recent board vote. He is now on a, quote, well-earned sabbatical, spending valuable time with his family, close quote. It goes on to say, we acknowledge the significant online speculation surrounding this decision, but wish to clarify that much of it is inaccurate. More on that later in the program. And those are your headline news. The gospel today comes to us from Matthew chapter 10, verses 1 through 7. And having called his 12 disciples together, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out, and to heal all manner of diseases and all manner of infirmities. And the names of the 12 apostles are these: the first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James, the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the publican, and James, the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Cananean, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent, commanding them, saying, Go ye not into the way of the Gentiles, and into the city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go ye rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And going, preach, saying, The kingdom of heaven is at hand. The gospel of the Lord. Laus tibi Christi. Notice the first name in the list is Simon Peter. The last name is always Judas Iscariot. It's the truth. It's always the way it is in the Gospels. First Peter, last Judas. There's a reason for that. Father Haydock says, before this time, the 12 were called disciples and not apostles. But now he selects these from the disciples and makes them, as it were, masters and interpreters of the ways of God to man. He sent afterwards 72 other disciples, but these 12 only to the whole world. His 12. Christ chose 12, that they might correspond to the number of the Jewish patriarchs, by whom they may be said to have been prefigured, and that as the whole Jewish people were descended according to the flesh from the 12 patriarchs, so the whole Christian people might be descended according to the Spirit from the 12 apostles. Others say he chose 12 neither more nor less to correspond with the 12 prophets of the old law, with the 12 fountains in Eliam, the 12 stones selected from the river Jordan, and preserved in the ark of the testament. Others compare the 12 apostles to the 12 months of the year, and the 4 evangelists to the 4 seasons. Simon was the first of the apostles, not in the time of his vocation, as his brother Andrew was called to the apostleship before him, but in dignity, inasmuch as he was constituted the vicar of Christ and the head of the church. It was necessary, Father Haydock goes on to say, first to warn the Jews of the arrival of the Messiah amongst them. Otherwise, they might have excused themselves for having rejected him by saying, He had sent his apostles to preach not to them, but to the Gentiles and to the Samaritans. St. Jerome. St. Chrysostom assigns another reason why the apostles were sent first to preach in Judea, vis-a-vis that having withstood the opposition of one nation, they might be more prepared to hold out against the attacks which they would no doubt have afterwards to sustain in their endeavors to convert the whole world. He forbids them to preach to the Gentiles because it was proper that the word of God should first be announced to the Jews, children of the kingdom. For, says St. Chrysostom, they are not sent to announce sensible things like Moses and the prophets, but something wholly new and before unheard of. They are not like the prophets to confine themselves to the preaching of temporal things. Their doctrine is wholly heavenly. They are sent to announce the good things of eternity. Notice, they're sent first to the lost sheep of the house of Israel to proclaim what? Behold, the kingdom of heaven has come upon you. And lest they make some excuse, oh, well, he first went to the Gentiles and he first went to these others before he went to us, so therefore it doesn't account to us. You have no excuses. All of your excuses have been removed from you, and still you reject him? Think about what that means. It's an eternal decision. When you reject Christ, having known better. He was proclaimed by those very prophets in the Old Testament that he would come, and they knew the season in which he would come because of Daniel and his prophecies, and still they reject him. Let us not reject Christ today. I don't know if you caught this, but Pam Bondi, in her reaction to being asked about Jeffrey Epstein, was kind of classic. Have a listen.
February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file, along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on...
A lot of people are questioning this today. A lot of people don't buy this. They believe, then why was he convicted? Why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison? If there's no client list and there's no victims, then what are we even talking about? Joining us to talk about this is the author of An Almost Insurmountable Evil, How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Pandemic. Mike McCormick, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Joe, good to see you with you again.
Praise be to God. People aren't buying the what's now the DOJ from the Trump administration's line about Jeffrey Epstein. What do you say?
You know, I frankly, I don't care much about Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't put a lot of worry into what he did. I know there's a lot of concern about the fact that there are these high-profile clients of these poor young women who were manipulated and raped, abused. But there's bigger things at work right now. And so one of the things I did just recently when this came out was I went on Brave and I searched. The search engine I use is Brave, not Google. And I searched Ehud Barak Epstein, not Jeffrey Epstein, just Epstein, Ehud Barak's former prime minister of Israel. Everything that came up pertained to Jeffrey Epstein. Factually reported in the media, he had a very strong relationship with the former prime minister of Israel. I think that's a pretty good indication of why things aren't being discussed openly. I don't, having worked in the White House, I worked there from 2002 to 2018. There is a lot of currents behind the scenes of what can be fully said and what is held in reserve. And some things have to be played out in the court of public opinion. And I think the final dispensation of the Epstein case is going to be played out in the court of public opinion. There was a settlement given to the victims from J.P. Morgan, so they got some money out of it. His co-conspirator is in prison right now over it, and he went to jail and got killed or killed himself. We're not sure exactly how, but that all happened in July and August of 2019. This is just as the Wuhan pandemic was getting rolled out. There's a lot behind the scenes, and I think what the Trump administration is doing is they're focusing on the bigger things than the little things. That's what Trump said in that brief interview he had in the cabinet room. And the reporter who asked him was Stephen Nelson from the New York Post. I know Stephen. I've worked with Stephen. Smart guy, asks reasonable questions. He's one of the few reporters I trust. He's a stand-up guy. He asks the right question. He asked Pam Bondi, and Trump chimed in. So they're trying to get to the bottom of it, but I think this is one of those situations where it's going to take a long time. And if it's classified information, how do you get to it?
Well, I guess this is part of the problem, because a lot of the speculation, and it's been going on now for years, even Bongino talked about this before he was in his deputy FBI director role on his radio program, that it's widely speculated that Epstein worked for the Israeli intelligence apparatus. He was one of their assets. And then his whole, Lolita Express, his islands, his houses were all bugged and cameraed so that the Israeli government could use and leverage that content for their own ends. So I think America wants an answer to that. And Pam Bondi clearly punted the ball down the field when she responded to your reporter friend's questions. How are we supposed to take that? I mean, it just feels like we can pay the taxes. We can cover the bill that gives $1 billion to Israel every year, but we can't ask a tough question and get an answer. I think we're entitled.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this is a point in time where you're looking at our government and we're looking at our government and we're wondering who's in charge. We're the voters. We want this. We voted for Trump to get to the bottom of this. And now he's sort of putting up a smokescreen. And the thing is, why? Why is he putting up the smokescreen? I've been in the White House with the president, sitting in the Oval Office as they get interviewed by the press. And one of the things you have to understand is they are scared of us, our hurt public opinion. They're scared of us. And because of that, they have to watch what they say. And they have to make decisions behind the scenes that are made for reasons. It's the tough decisions that they have to make that get to the Oval Office. So why is Trump making this decision? I trust Trump. I trust Dan Bongino. I trust Kash Patel. I don't know Pam Bondi that well, but she's in that position for a reason. So I'm right now going to trust it. I pray every day of the rosary to make sure that our government is going well. I feel like things are going in the right direction, generally in a big situation, in the big concerns. So what is Epstein really about? I think the court of public opinion is going to get to it. I personally have been trying to get in touch with the U.S. Department of Justice. I've reached out personally to Jean Pirro in her office, to Ed Martin in his office, to say, look, I'm a witness to crimes that are committed by Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan and the U.S. attorney who was supposed to investigate them, David Weiss, and I'd like to testify in front of a grand jury. And I don't hear back from them. So we're at a point where we have to our vote is what decides how our government is run. And as long as the elections are fair and clear, that we're still in charge. What this test tells us is there may be entities behind the votes that are more in charge than we are. And that's why it's got to be played out in the court of public opinion. I don't think Trump is doing the wrong thing. It's very public. He's putting it in front of the TV. Pam Bondi had to explain herself to us out of the cabinet room in the White House with him at her side. He's gone out and he's backed Bongino and Patel. So we've got to sit back and try to figure out what are the big issues here that are at work and at play. And, we either have to trust in him and let that happen and see what plays out.
I got to say, though, when I watched Donald Trump respond, he cut in. So the question was asked, and he's like, I just want to say something. Pam's like, okay. And you can almost see the look on her face when he's making a statement. It's almost as if, let me just throw this on the desktop here and just show this to you.
Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
Everybody's looking at him like, oh, boy, what's he going to say? But are you still talking about Epstein? That seems to be like the most naive question I've ever heard out of the supposed art of the deal guy. Why would you even ask that question, Mr. Trump? You know better. America is so sick and tired of the corrupt swamp that you promised to drain, and you're asking us why we're still talking about it? Because he was a blatant criminal. And we want justice, and we expect you, we voted for you to give us this justice, and now you're asking us to move on from it. I got to say, Mike, most of us are really disappointed by this. Yeah.
I mean, I'm still going to, I'm going to back the establishment on this. I got to stand that. When Epstein first got killed or died, I could see that it was, I thought actually it was suicide. Here's a guy who's very prominent. All of a sudden he gets tossed in jail and he winds up dead. I don't know. There was a lot of speculation around it. I've talked about it, but it's a side of Washington that doesn't interest me. There's other more important things that I personally witnessed. We got attacked by a biowarfare event 5 years ago in 2000 that was released by what I think was our intelligence agency and our government that was working for Joe Biden. That's, to me, really significant. What Epstein did could be a distraction, could be a deflection. And so why are we going down that road? That's my question. And I kind of side with Trump on that. Why are we looking at this? There's bigger things at play here, really big things. And one of the things we have to watch is, what is our government? Who are we voting for, and why are we voting for them? And are our votes being tallied correctly? This is a pivotal moment in our government, but we've got to understand what our role is in it. And is it just to complain and ask for results, or is it to vote people in who will achieve results? And what are the results we're looking for? We got to really think it through.
One of the things Kash Patel said before he became the director of the FBI is he said on day one, he thought the black book should be released, the Kennedy files should be released. In fact, he said there needs to be almost like a department set up that is constantly unclassifying these documents and releasing them to the public. So because Americans have been waiting for this sort of revelation for a very long time. And it seems like that's not something Trump could do. I mean, maybe he thought he could do, but now he realizes he can't. Can you peel back the curtain on that a little bit for us, Neanderthals? We don't understand. Why isn't it just as simple as, yes, I declassify that, release it to the world? He's the president, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I'm going to tell you, I'm trying to get in front of them into a grand jury to testify about crimes that I personally witnessed. The only realm I have to do that right now is the court of public opinion, which you're thankfully having me on to talk about. So Kash Patel should have somebody from the FBI talk to me and say, hey, we hear you have information on Joe Biden. I've reached out to the DOJ. I've gone through the behind the scenes channels, and I'm not hearing back. So yeah, I'm a little suspicious. I'm looking at Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi and saying, and Judge Jeanine Pirro, when are you going to have me down in front of just an interview? Tell me, yes, we can interview you and potentially have you on as a witness in front of a grand jury or not. I definitely saw crimes occur on Air Force Two with Joe Biden. It's time to have that weighed in the Justice Department, adjudicated.
Amen. Mike McCormick, we're out of time, but thanks for hanging out and weighing in on this. Check out his book. We're going to put a link to it, An Almost Insurmountable Evil: How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Pandemic. We're going to put a link to that and others from his catalog in the show notes today at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Mike McCormick, God bless you. Look forward to having you back soon. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain, and here are your headline news. Just the News reports, Ag Secretary issues clear declaration, no amnesty. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins yesterday issued an unambiguous statement affirming that the Trump administration would not pursue amnesty for illegal aliens and that it sought to achieve 100% American participation in the ag sector. The announcement comes amid reports that she and members of the agricultural industry had been lobbying the administration to either pass an amnesty for illegal farm workers or to pass mass deportations and raids on farms. Catholic News Agency reports 2 Midwest Catholic universities merge. 2 Midwest Catholic universities are merging in the hopes of making Catholic education more accessible amid decreasing enrollment numbers across the nation. The small historic institutions, St. Ambrose University in Davenport and Mount Mercy University in Cedar Rapids, have both had a presence in eastern Iowa for more than a century. The plan of this merge, they are saying, is proactive and not related to financial challenges. And Ground News reports Texas governor says more than 160 people are still missing after deadly floods. Governor Greg Abbott announced that 161 individuals remain missing, including 5 children and 1 counselor from Camp Mystic, and noted that 5 girls, along with a camp counselor, have yet to be located. Rescue efforts continued amid hazardous conditions, while political debate arose over whether the NWS, or the National Weather Service, staffing cuts affected warning effectiveness. Did you catch that flooding in New Mexico yesterday, too? We still have a lot of prayers to make. And those are your headline news. Praise be to God in all things. There is a great article over on Kennedy Hall's Substack, Mere Tradition. Stop sending your kids to digital hell. The screens are killing your children. We're going to link to it for you today in our show notes, but you can find it, meretradition.substack.com. Kennedy joins us to discuss it. Good morning to you, Kennedy Hall.
Good morning.
Praise be to God. Good to have you on the team. Thanks for getting up early today. Hey, let's talk about your article here. You know, it's interesting. This is one of those areas that we see it crosses all kinds of boundaries, right? It's not just it's just in the Catholic Church alone. It's not like it just happens to Novus Ordo kids. It happens to trad. I've seen trad kids with the iPads at mass, you know, and we see them in all sectors, rich, poor, everyone in between. It seems like it's a very big issue for parents. We give our kids these devices because we think it's going to help them, right? But does it?
Yeah, this is one of those areas where you can actually find some pretty good stuff in the general secular realm from researchers and whatnot, which is rare because most of that stuff's become kind of woke or whatever. But yeah, there's I don't know if you call it maybe a movement and awareness, whatever you call it, that the screens are having an effect. And I remember I started teaching. I'm no longer a teacher, but I started my first year of teaching was 2013, 2014. And I remember I was teaching a grade 5-6 class. And there was one young lady who would be, in her 20s now or something, or late teens at least. And she came to me and she said, Mr. Hall, I can't read if it's not on a screen. And I thought to myself, well, this is silly. And then I talked to my colleagues about it, and they said, no, she has it's called an IEP, an individual education plan. I don't know the terms in different districts. She has an IEP where she gets to do all her coursework on her Chromebook and iPad because she has trouble reading on paper. And I thought to myself, that's not real. That's not a real disorder. That's not a real, that's not a thing. And, but psychologically, obviously she believed this. And, if she didn't have access to her thing, then she would not do well in her tests and she would get anxiety and blah, 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 all these, psychology speak. And that was in 2014. And things have gotten progressively more insane. And, just I can say as a parent, we have computers in our house. Of course, I'm on one right now. We don't have cable television. We do have a little television set that we can play DVDs on. It's kind of up in the corner, not in the center of the living room. And we don't have screens for our kids. They've obviously seen stuff on computers and things, but we don't give it to them because, quite frankly, I've noticed even when it's like really rainy days or really long winter days here, and they watch a couple movies or something, even then their behavior starts to change. So I just, from a practical note, I can't even stomach the idea of giving them an iPad or something because I'm afraid it'll turn them into awful children. And I really do think that's happening. And beyond that, just the behavior, the moral hazards are just insane. And I can't understand for the life of me at this point, especially Catholics, giving their kids screens. I think it's one of the stupidest things you could do.
We have intentionally delayed giving our kids any access to the internet or devices in general. We waited till they were, older teenagers before we slowly introduced them into little things here and there. We said, like you, we don't have cable television. We have a television set, but it's in our bedroom and not in the living room. And it is, for rare entertainments or what have you. But one of the things that I was thinking about when reading your article is just how bad it is for adults. I mean, I look at even my own life, my job, my whole world. I'm constantly doing research. I'm constantly listening to podcasts and reading articles and trying to see what the conversations are out there. And it's bad enough for adults. Yet look at the behavior that we're training into kids. Well, my own kids, maybe seeing my behavior, all day long. That can't be good, is it?
No, and I actually got rid of my smartphone for that reason. I work from home. And I'm in my homeschool room right now. My little 1.5-year-old is out there eating pancakes and with the other children. And so there are a lot of really great things that a smartphone can do from a business perspective. It's more convenient. You can be walking around, on a call, Teams call, whatever you guys all know, because you guys are plugged in for professional reasons. And it's great. But I realized to myself, one day, one of my kids, I think it was my oldest son, he drew a picture of me sitting on the couch, and he drew a picture of me hunched over holding my phone. And I don't have like a problem with bad stuff or whatever, but I realized, oh my, he just sees me on that thing so much because I'm working from home that I'm, his image of dad, which will be imprinted in his mind, is dad looks at that thing all day. And I just thought to myself, I need to find another way to deal with this. So I ended up getting this flip phone. It does have Android on it, so you can do emails if you want, but it's a tiny screen, so I don't do anything fun on it because it's a chore. And that alone, my screen time went down 2/3 on average. And then, I spend time looking at my laptop, but it's just, there used to be, I'm 37, even me, I'm not that old, but I remember kind of an older time, a simpler time. And the different devices had different things. You had the Walkman that you would use while you were running or walking the dog or whatever. You had books that were not Kindle books. You had the desktop computer. You had all these things kind of separate. So it was like, this is for this activity. This is for that activity. They didn't kind of cross and blur the lines. Now it's the one thing for all the things. So we're not really we've imbibed improper habits, but especially to our children, we're not teaching them this idea that there are different things for recreation, there are different things for business, there are different things for communication, and so on and so forth. So it's really hard to teach good habits when it's all combined. So I said to myself, I need to decentralize my tech, basically. And I was very open with my children, and I said, listen, yes, dad has been on this phone for 3 or 4 hours a day, but you have to understand that a huge portion of that is emails and blah, blah, blah. I said, but I'm getting rid of this because I don't want you guys to think that, everyone who grows up has to be on their phone all day. So that is something I've had to consider in my own life.
But how do you do that? How do you let once the genie's out of the bottle, how do you get it back in?
Well, I mean, I'm not a fatalist or determinist. So the same way that you correct behavior in your children or yourself, there are certain sins I don't struggle with anymore. Praise be to God. Like I did when I was a young man, because I learned, and I implemented habits and whatever. And so with my children, my oldest is 9, Actually, our seventh child will be here in a couple months, but my oldest is 9, my youngest is a year and a half old. And so, they're far from being fully cooked, so to speak. There's a lot of time left in the oven to get them to where they need to be. So I just had an open communication and then said, listen, if you guys grow up and you work in the trades or something like that, you thankfully won't have to be plugged into this stuff all day. There is technology, of course, but daddy works on the computer. Daddy does the shows, whatever they think it's TV or something. Daddy writes things. So that's a necessity. And I always joke with him. I say, one day I wish I could just throw it all away and I would just go sling rock with my buddy who works in concrete. But this is my path. So, I just want to teach them the balance and hopefully they'll see it. And then also the school that we're going to be sending our boys to when they're in high school has like a strict no phone policy. The school doesn't even have the internet except for the teachers and whatnot. They have to write all their papers by hand. They can't use computers. They can use computers in like a computer class, but they do everything by hand otherwise. So, it's just something we'll be intentional about.
I think it's hard, and I think a lot of parents have to make tough decisions and they prioritize their family life in order to be able to sort of mitigate the risks. But ultimately, our kids, I still have a 9-year-old at the house. So our kids, the future they're facing is a more digitally connected world, not a less digitally connected world. So what advice do you give to parents in that regard? How do we help our kids navigate that? I know you just laid out some principles that you can follow in general, but I see it getting worse. I don't see it getting easier.
I agree. But, I have fond memories of not having the internet. We had dial-up when I was in grade 7 or 8, but it was like, okay, wait 7 minutes for anything to load. It was, there was nothing, right? You just looked up the odd thing for like a project or something. But I remember going to the library on my own for a school project, Dewey Decimal System, all these things. And not just to be nostalgic about it, but from a very practical perspective, one of the things I realized when I was a teacher as well is that the kids who were raised with tech all the time were actually worse at using the tech than I was when I was a kid. Because the tech is based on like logical thinking and the systems that people used before the tech. And then they sort of made it faster within the tech. Google is like a super sophisticated Dewey Decimal System. I think even just from a perspective of wanting them to be better at it when they have to professionally, it behooves us to raise them without using. It's kind of like learning math without the calculator. You'd learn how to do that by hand. Eventually, you'll be a math wizard. Whereas the kid who grows up with the calculator won't be able to get to that higher level of theoretical algebra and calculus and so forth.
Yeah, I had a professor tell me in college he wouldn't let us use the calculator because he says if you don't know how to do math, the calculator doesn't do you any good. Garbage in, garbage out. So he forced us to do everything the old-fashioned way manually, which was terrible, actually. So I got to say, a lot of parents are probably thinking that very same sentiment right now. Like the thought of we're going to have to go do everything the old-fashioned way in order to prevent our kids from having to become slaves to this crazy digital world we're living in seems overwhelming and a bridge too far. They just feel like maybe it's just not worth it in the long run. Easier to give a kid an iPad, keep them entertained, keep them focused so they're out of their hair so that mom and dad can get stuff done. Kennedy, why do you want to make their lives any worse?
Well, because it's not the first time in human history where moms have had a lot of children underfoot and they've had to get things done. So it's clearly not impossible. Your kids will react to the environment you create. We have these little things called Yoto players. They're basically like a new fancy version of a tape player. They just have these programmable cards. And the kids can go grab whatever songs or storybooks or whatever we've put on them. They can sit and color a page and listen to it. For them, that's their fun tech. And that's just what we have in our environment. We don't have video games in the house, etc. So that's just what they're going to know. So parents can create their own environment. They don't have to give in to the pressure of the world.
Intentions. Can I just give a special shout out to our sponsor, iCatholicMobile.com. It's an incredible organization. They're not just a wireless phone provider for families or organizations. Man, I got to tell you, they are providing free service to priests and religious. They're doing some amazing things. And a portion of their bills paid by their customers come to support organizations like ours here at the station of the Cross Catholic Media Network, making it possible for me to get up out of bed at 3-something in the morning, 5 days a week, and bring you the latest and greatest information. My phone company is Catholic. Is yours? Just asking. iCatholicMobile.com is the website, iCatholicMobile.com. Kennedy Hall is our guest. We've been talking about his article, Stop Sending Your Kids to Digital Hell. The Screens Are Killing Your Children. I did have one more follow-up question on that. Good morning to you again, Kennedy. That just thinking about going back to Mass. I started the conversation mentioning it. I kind of want to end it there too. I see a lot of parents do this. They'll bring their kids and their kids will have some sort of digital device at Mass. And I've always thought, like, that's crazy. Like, what? Like, but they want to keep them quiet. And I think it's like a multi-layered problem. On one hand, there are masses where if a kid makes any sound whatsoever, everybody gives them the dirty eye. Parents get all nervous. And so they figure they got to keep them quiet the whole time. They'll have snacks. They'll have drinks. They'll have a digital iPad. What would you say to that?
I understand. I mean, we had 4 kids under 4 years at the first kind of go around we had. And then, we're having another 3 kids now under 4 years and stuff. Like, I get it. I understand. I understand that it's hard at Mass, but I would also just say this to parents out there regarding Mass, especially the traditional Mass, because let's be honest, TLM, especially if it's a low Mass, is a lot quieter and the high Masses are a lot longer. It's tough, Historically, if you read the old manuals about what excuses one from attending Mass, it was a given that if you had small children, that they didn't have to be sick. They didn't have to be, whatever. You didn't have to have some grave personal life problem. It's just impractical to go to every single liturgical service for the same amount of time as everybody else. Historically in the European countries and even in America and Canada, when there were multiple Masses at the same church every day, generational living, that sort of thing, it was common that parents would go to Mass. They'd come home, grandparents would go to Mass, things like that. So obviously we can't all do that. But the other day on First Saturday, it was Mass and then benediction. I didn't even bother, I didn't even bother trying to stick around with my 1.5-year-old who was, haranguing and whatever during benediction. So I just walked around the block with the stroller and prayed the rosary, while my other kids served and prayed during Mass, because that was just what it was. I don't, there's certain things you just can't expect a little child to do because they just can't do it. So if you're giving them some sort of artificial device to try to make them do something, it's like, well, there's this sign that they can't even do that thing anyway. So just cut your losses. And, your primary state in life is your children. And if you have to walk around or, you have to go separately as a family, that's what Catholics have always done. But don't cave into the distraction because, quite frankly, then they're going to associate going to church with watching whatever thing they're watching. And that's not good either. It has to be the old school. Mass is really hard when you have little kids, and kids learn the hard way to sit still, and you learn the hard way to be patient when they won't sit still. And we all kind of grow through the cross together. But don't try to pacify it because that's going to lead to greater consequences.
Patience. Have you been talking to my wife? Has she been telling you stories about me? I don't know. I'm a very patient person. Just ask Jake. Actually, don't ask Jake about that. Just go with it anyway. I want to encourage everybody to check out the article and read it. I do want to transition while we still have a minute or two left, a few minutes left in our conversation on the radio side. We can go into the after show. You used to work for LifeSite News, if I'm not mistaken. And this announcement today or actually it was yesterday, it's been rocking the internet a wee bit among Catholic circles. John Henry Weston is no longer the CEO and editor-in-chief. And it's being talked about as though it's a major upset over there. How are you seeing this story?
Well, I did work there for almost 3 years, 2.5 years. I know John Henry personally. I have spent time in his home. He's cooked me and my children a wonderful steak, and we've shared Alberta Premium, rye whiskey together. I really enjoy John Henry's company. He's a personal friend, and I think the world of him. And I sent him a message yesterday saying that I respect him greatly. If he needs anything, reach out to me because I think he's a great man. LifeSite is not a traditional Catholic organization. It has been historically a pro-life organization, just in general, and that's great. That's why they were founded. And the staff in general of LifeSite has, like all of us, in the last since the Francis pontificate and so forth, has asked a lot of questions, and many people have kind of changed their opinions on certain things to do with how do we view the papacy, how do we view the liturgy, all the things that people have been struggling with. Everyone has. And LifeSite has had to try to deal with that because it's an organization has a lot of turnover, because journalism always has a lot of turnover. And there's a reason why in movies, old school movies with like the journalism bullpen and stuff and papers, everyone's smoking and everyone's an alcoholic, because trying to be a journalist is like not natural. I mean, I don't care if you're left wing or right wing. It's what's the worst thing we can possibly get that happened today? We get people to listen. So it plays on your, you get like adrenal fatigue. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of stress going on. So they've had to deal with the changing landscape, and it was never a consensus within the organization that it was traditional or that it was not. And personally, I just think that there's been some discord within the ranks. Not to say anyone was a bad person or anything. People are just, like all Catholics, dealing with that. And my gut feeling tells me that I've noticed that I've noticed basically that the viewership and the support of LifeSite has been down. That's just, if you know the metrics, you can find it. And I think they're just, my personal gut feeling is that they're going to try to rebrand themselves as a sort of conservative Catholic, not officially traditional kind of, mainstream Catholic organization. That's my feeling. I don't think it's a good, I might be wrong. I don't think it's a good decision. Nonetheless, I don't appreciate the speculators online talking about this, mythological trad Inc. And, there's been a call sent out for everyone to support Leo and stuff. I really don't think that's the case. I think they don't really understand LifeSite. LifeSite is not a traditional Catholic organization the way people think it was. They have some traditional Catholic personalities, like I was there and stuff, but that's not what it is. People just don't know what they're talking about. Right. Also, LifeSite as an organization feeds on crisis like any news organization. And so they had this meteoric rise with the Francis stuff, and then with the COVID stuff, and then with the Biden stuff and the vaccine stuff and all these things. Quite frankly, we don't have the same crises we did then, and especially not from the Catholic perspective, because we don't have a Pope telling everybody to get vaccinated and all these kinds of things. Yeah. And it's got a Catholic, element to it. So they're not going to be able to compete with the Charlie Kirks of the world and stuff like that if it's just politics, because they can't. So I think they're having a little bit of mission drift and trying to figure out what they should do. And this might be their way of trying to do it, I guess. I don't know.
It's very interesting. I have a source that I've been somewhat communicating with who's given me just a wee bit of insight into it, and I'll share that in the after show.
And we're back. Welcome to the after show, everyone.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Praise be to God. If you're new here, thanks for hanging out with us. Make sure to subscribe, whatever channel you're watching, and come back. That'd be amazing. Let me get some shout-outs here, though. Sharon, good morning to you. One of our major insiders. Praise be to Jesus. James 16897 from sunny Romania. Damon, once again, thank you and all of TSA for allowing me to keep my shoes on when I go through the airport security now. Can we work on the belt next? Are we allowed to? Can I just keep the belt on? You can keep your shoes on now? We can. Praise be to God.
That's amazing. I'll be in San Antonio next week, and then Post Falls the week after. So I'm going to be going through some TSA.
Yeah. You're going to be at Sanctus
Ranch. That's right.
Love the place. Jane Steves, good morning to you. Yvonne, Eileen, Mateus from sunny California, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Low Key is here. Good morning to you. Appreciate you being on the team. Says Joe, would you give up on the Epstein thing for the lives at Gaza and Iran? Would I give up on the Epstein if it meant saving lives in Gaza and Iran? That's an interesting question. I'd have to chew on that a wee bit.
Yeah, it's
because
interesting theory.
It seems complicated, and I'm not sure how best to answer that. Because if Epstein is a Mossad agent working for Israel's interests, are you saying then that Donald Trump is playing 4D chess to try to help the Gazans by giving up? It's like, I don't know.
That's not 4D chess. That's just making a deal.
I know, but I'm trying to understand what that deal looks like or means. That's
the deal is we won't push it on this thing so that we can get stuff in return. But if Trump wants to build
Trump Tower on the Gaza Strip, I'm not up for that.
Are you still believing that?
No, but I'm trying to illustrate the point that, like, what does Donald Trump actually want? Do you know? Can we say clearly? I can't. I don't know what he actually wants with the Gazans.
Oh yeah,
he wanted them to go to other countries. No, I'm sorry. Listen, the Gazans might have been pumped in the 1940s because they saw that England was going to give the land away to the Israelis. But okay, but now we're generations past, and they live there. It's their home too. So it's time to act like it. And this thing just gets messier and messier. So I don't actually know where Donald Trump stands on any of it. That's part of the reason why I'm having trouble answering it. Jack, good morning to you. Becky Hansen, good morning to you. Matthias says, if you pack salt in your luggage, it will appear as an explosive. That's not true. I bring salt every time I bring exercise salt every time I travel in little baggies. And so far, nobody's even accused me of bringing drugs across. So it's all worked out.
I was just going to say, you use little white baggies of white powders in your luggage. TSA really needs to step up their game.
Yeah. I actually don't use the white stuff.
You're going to be the only one
that
still
is bad for you.
You're going to be the only one they're still going to tell to take your shoes off.
I use of course I use great salt, pink Himalayan. I mean, like, that's the only way to go. Okay, Catholics don't like Catholics use that processed salt. It's bad for you. Which that's a whole nother. Before I get back into LifeSite News, and I do want to do that here in just 2 seconds, but before I do that, one of the other aspects to your article, Kennedy, that I failed to bring up that my producer Jake will just absolutely love is apparently you are like a pro sugar kind of a guy, which is really too bad because sugar is bad for you. So there's that. So,
Jake, goodness gracious, that. Yeah, sugar is bad for you. When I used to live in Italy, everyone ate spaghetti, pasta, some sort of thing every single day, bread 2-3 times a day. And I don't think they have a word for obesity in Italy. I think our problem in North America is just the sedentary nature. Our civilization is largely built around cars. Yeah. And even in Italy, like when I lived in Lucca, which is where St. Gemma Galliani is from, actually. Here, when you go to the mall and you got to park at the back of the parking lot or Costco or something, it's like, oh my goodness, I got to walk 500 feet to the door. This is the worst day of my life. And go there. My mom would take us into the city because we lived out in a little village, right? And we go to Lucca and we'd park. To pay for parking, you had to pay for everything there. And it was like a 20-minute walk to get into the city. And then when you got into the city, which is in walls, it was a 20-minute walk to get to the store. It was like everyone's walking 3 hours a day, even if they work in an office building. And they don't have high rises, so they don't have elevators. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agree. I mean, but I think processing the food has just compounded that problem and made it a lot worse.
I think the processing is only part of that too. It is definitely part of it, but also just the general quality of the food and what is being grown. The quality of what is being grown. I love
when I'm in Italy. I love the food. The food's great in Italy.
Yeah. No, I know people. If you want to just talk about allergies, I know people who are completely celiac symptoms here in the United States. But they could eat pasta fine in Europe. It's just the quality is legitimately a huge part of it too.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Hey, Rosie, good morning to you.
Joe.
Yeah.
To be clear, Joe, I did say in the article that it was ironic that the people were anti-sugar for their kid, but they shoved an iPad in their face. And I said, maybe let your kid do a cake smash when they turn 1 and don't give them an iPad.
Excuses. You are all in for vaccines, dyes, processed foods, and everything. That's why I'm reading your article, okay? You're clearly
by Big Sugar.
You're a shill for Big Pharma and Big Food. Clearly. It's obvious from your article.
It's true.
Robert and Bruce, good morning. Gugwensa61, Gus CMH, Nick the Mike, Lynn Pine, good morning to you. KZ2, welcome to the team. Don Paddock, June Ybarra, good morning to you. Praise be to Jesus. Patty, by the way, our plank owner, been here from the beginning, asked us to pray for everybody still in Texas as Pray for Canyon Lake. We're on a boil water notice due to the debris that has come to the lake from the Kerrville flood. Oh, so yeah, there's still about 160 people missing. Yeah, I reported on that earlier, so we are still praying. And did you see those crazy flood videos yesterday from New Mexico, too? Yikes. Speaking of messing with things, the weather, anyone? Sounds like we're messing with the weather a lot. A lot of people hanging out over on YouTube this morning. Good morning to you. I do want to jump back into the Live Night news story here. I want to share just a wee bit of something from a source I have. I won't tell you who the source is, though. Christine OFS, good morning. Thank you for being a member. Thank you for being on the inside.
Wait,
Richard Kerwin,
Joe,
you are amazing.
Are you concealing information for strategic diplomatic reasons?
That's true.
How dare you? The people deserve the truth all the time.
How dare you?
Always.
You need
the
to
people
have that
deserve
on,
all of the truth and everything uncovered all the time.
All the time. Okay, whatever, Mister. I'm going to call you out just because you called out Donnie. Defending your boy Donnie again. I see.
No, I'm not even defending that. I just don't particularly. I'm kind of with Mike McCormick where I don't particularly care about that issue.
Yeah. Well, I care, but maybe I don't care as much as Charlie Kirk's going to care, or Jack Posobiec or somebody like that. But I care.
Oh well, Jack, who brought out the fake files like for a big publicity stunt, that was nonsense.
Right, that's the other aspect we failed to mention about that whole story. The whole binder thing.
That whole thing was just the saddest thing I've ever seen.
I'm the last guy to get the cool guy memo thing.
Yeah.
Like say, oh, you want USAID money? Just go to this office and ask for it. Exactly. I didn't get that memo. Like I never got a dime from them, but apparently the BBC did. You know, I didn't get the binders from Pam Bondi. Everybody else did, I guess. I'm not cool enough. Anyway, I'm just going through the comments. Phoebe, good morning to you. Patty, good morning to you. Rob, Flying Tigers, good morning to you. Says Kennedy Hall runs the President Rutherford B. Hayes Award for Best Classic Beard. Look at you go. Nice
well, thank you.
Kennedy. It's a very nice beard.
Anyway, we distracted you from your source.
I distracted me.
I distracted
all right, so I don't want to say who the source is. I don't want to get them embroiled in any sort of online public thing. But there's a source related to LifeSite News who has given me some insight into this. And there's 2 points that I think are important to mention from this source. One is, and it kind of goes back to something you said earlier, Kennedy. So you sort of affirmed this for me when I asked you a few minutes back what your thoughts were on this. There's an internal dynamic. There's an internal dynamic on the team. And sometimes teams aren't getting along, things aren't working out, things are not smooth, and you got to figure out what elements do you change in order to correct that. It sounds like there was something along that line. The source made it clear that things on the outward, how people like me from the outside perceive the organization, is different than the way it's being perceived on the inside amongst the team itself. So this was a move to sort of correct internal dynamic issues. It's funny because when I first read, I'll let you comment. Give me 1 second. When I first read the statement, I read it wrong. When I read it, it sounded like John Henry Weston wanted a sabbatical. Now he's getting one. I'm like, oh, well, good for him. I'm like, good for him. I like John Henry Weston. This is great. He's getting a break. Oh, I'm happy for the guy. And then I had to reread it. And I'm like, no, you idiot, Joe. He was voted out 5-4. Like if he wanted a sabbatical, would have been a unanimous decision. A 5-4 decision clearly indicates something different. So then I had to go back and go, oh yeah, wow, okay. So there is something here. You were going to say, Kennedy?
Well, I was just going to say, so I've worked for 2 nonprofits. I worked for the Fatima Center, and I worked for LifeSite News. And the internal dynamics of nonprofits often are like kind of a dumpster fire. And not because of like intention. I'm not saying anyone's trying to be bad. I mean, obviously we can all try to be bad, but I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying it's tough because in these, well, it's funny. You know, the NFL is a nonprofit, by the way. Funny enough.
I did not know that.
It's a for-profit nonprofit, but their business model is actually their business model is actually genius. This is why they dominate the sports landscape, is because they took the notion of nonprofit as a model that would force equitable, basically contribution of owners, so that they would have equitable play on the field, which has made the product so much better, which has made everyone more rich, right? So it's a nonprofit for tax reasons, basically, and for business reasons, but they don't care about like society. But in the nonprofit world with religious nonprofits, it's really tough because everyone needs to make profit. So it's not, people misunderstand what that even means. Nonprofit doesn't mean we don't care if we make any money. It means it's a certain way of operating where you don't have anything left in the tank for, let's say private investment reasons at the end. It's more about how you handle the business, and you get tax deductions and whatever. But within those organizations, especially when they're religious, there's always this element of where does God end and the profit begins? That's kind of a conundrum. It's like, we're doing this for the church, we're doing this for souls, all these sorts of things. Yeah, but you also have investors and donors, and they're disagreeing with each other, and you have employees, and you've promised this and that and whatnot, and you just don't avoid the politics. And there were things that would happen when I was there, Fatima Center and LifeSite, where I kind of scratched my head and I just thought, I have no idea what these people are thinking. Also, the whole notion of having the board. I mean, you saw this with Church Militant. It's not like there's some infallible process for putting people on boards. There's ways of getting people to mount against each other, like voting blocks and so forth. And so there's a lot of ins and outs that people just don't know and won't know. And even people that work there won't know these ins and outs. There was a gentleman who was at LifeSite who was ousted when I was there, and I can't remember his position, but he was kind of like second in command to two co-founders, including John Henry, who were like kind of two heads of the organization. And one day he just was gone. We came onto a call, and it was like, so-and-so is gone. And there were rumors, he wanted this, he wanted that, but we didn't know. And we weren't told, and we never were going to be told, because there are also elements of confidentiality within all of these things. So I would just hesitate people from saying they know something, because quite frankly, unless they were privy to the internal conversations between the various parties, and even if they're an employee, I was an employee, and there are just lots of things you will never be told. And hunches are one thing, but assumptions are another. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah. The other thing that me and this source sort of gave me some insight into was because the other person that was let go was Stephen Cox, whom I've interviewed. I've got his book sitting right over here, actually. Quite liked it. Navigating the Crisis in the Church, Essays in Defense of Traditional Catholicism. Great book. He is now looking for, keep him in your prayers. He also needs, an income for him and his family. But I'm told by my source that the John Henry Weston and now him, they're not related. They just unfortunate coincidence and timing, maybe, but they're not. I'm told they're not related.
Oh yeah, those would be different things. Also,
they're kind of being lumped though, because you mentioned earlier, and I think it was right to do so. Hold on one second, let me get this in front of me. This is from the Chris Jackson Substack, who's making the internet rounds this morning. A lot of people I reposted it this morning too after I read it, but then I talked to the source a little bit, and they're lumping these together. They're saying that this is all related, and basically you had talked about this earlier, that there's this Trad Inc. Now everybody's on board. No more criticizing anything because we got Leo now. So, and John Henry got in trouble because he, retweeted Vegano, and he's critical of Leo and all these things. But that story doesn't seem to be actually true.
Listen, I'll full disclosure, like these guys that are all talking about Trad Inc., like I've been accused of being in like a concord with Cardinal Burke to get Pope Leo elected. Like those things are like appearing.
Nobody accuses me of these things. That would be amazing. I would love that.
I'm sitting in my homeschool room on a laptop, and I can hear my kids crying in the next room because like I'm a dad with a smallish house, don't even have an office. If I was in some sort of Inc., goodness gracious, I'd hope I'd have some money to be sent my way. I'm not saying that I can't support, I'm doing fine with my family, but I'm like, if that was in an Inc., like some sort of thing where I was, I got the call from the bat signal came out and said, do this thing. It's like, okay, where's my Bitcoin or my gold bullion? Like,
right.
Where's my apartment? Where's my apartment in Rome? If I'm going to be in cahoots and like risk my eternal salvation to like commandeer a conclave, for goodness sake, as a layperson, I don't even know what that means. They think I'm some sort of like patrician nobleman in 11th century Rome. I don't even know what the heck they're talking about. If I was in some sort of Inc. that was like doing stuff, I would please like an apartment in Rome. I would like it to be close to the Vatican so I could visit there every day. I want free pass. Like, I'm just saying, there is I hate to use the term conspiracy theorist because most conspiracies turn out to be true, or at least partially true. Let's be honest. But there is an element that guys get so into their head and they don't have any primary sources. And then they start accusing other people of stuff. And they also accuse people of being like, like, for example, I haven't really come out and said anything bad about Pope Leo. I don't actually talk about the Pope very much. People think they lump me in with the whole, on Anthony Stein. I love Anthony Stein, but his thing is not my thing, and my thing is not his thing. We're just different guys with different temperaments and interests, and that's fine. People do different stuff. If you actually look at my channel, I used to be accused of always bashing Pope Francis. One time I actually did a show responding to some guy, and I went through like my last 30 shows, and like one of them was on Pope Francis, So I just don't talk about the Pope very often. And then when Pope Leo was elected, obviously it's big news. And I was like, all right, I have some thoughts that might be positive. I'll put them out there. And then that was it. I haven't talked about him since. And they're like, oh, you're part of this Trad Inc. and you're not criticizing because you got the call. And I'm like, I didn't get a call from anybody. And I prefer to talk about whether or not there were giants in the Old Testament because that's what makes me happy. And I don't really care about, who he appointed for this or that. I just don't care personally. And but if I don't bash him, then somehow I'm part of this like conspiracy, and it's like, just give it a break. They're just losing their heads. Some of these guys, I have to be honest.
Oh yeah. Richard says, Joe, I'm a nonprofit as most of my money is gone by the end of the first week because all these companies I use expect to be paid. Yeah, I'm definitely in the nonprofit category myself, Richard. So welcome to the team, my friend. Good morning to you. Laura says, I'm not traditional or not even sure what it means to be one. Come to think of it, I don't know what I am, but I love Jesus and I believe in the Holy Eucharist and real presence of God. Well, that's a good first step. Praise be to God. Beverly Hamilton, good morning to you.
Really,
Phoebe, good morning to you. Says that video was amazing, Kennedy. That's so Phoebe's sending you some shout outs there. Okay, so there a few more, I think, follow-up questions here on the John Henry Weston LifeSite News story. One is, he's the co-founder of this organization. Do you see any parallels? I was watching Avoiding Babylon last night. Actually, I wasn't. I go to bed early. I got up early and I watched Avoiding Babylon. They were sort of creating a parallel with the whole Veritas fallout, and you might even say church militant fallout. Michael Voris is church militant. No Michael Voris, no church militant. What's his name was Veritas. When he left, he got ousted. Veritas went away. Do you see the same thing for LifeSite News? Is John Henry Weston LifeSite News?
Certainly he's the face of LifeSite News. LifeSite News has sort of two sides to it, though. People don't realize that the article side, we're talking about, I don't know, 3 to 5 million reads a month. When I was there, if I had an article that would go viral for like be top trending on the website, it would be 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 views. Or reads. And so a significant portion of LifeSite doesn't actually watch the shows. But from this perspective of the face of it in the media outside of print, because John Henry wouldn't write that many articles for them, right? He used to, like he started it and he would write all the articles because it was like him and Hillary White and whatever for like 10 years. And Steve Jalsevec used to write a ton of articles as well, but they have, like 20 journalists at this point or something pumping out 2-3 articles a day. And So there's two sides. So yes, on the one hand, certainly the face of it as far as media is concerned, but on the other hand, there's a huge side that's just written. And you know what? They had a marketing change when I was there, and they brought in a guy who used to work for TPUSA, and he brought in that very like TPUSA mentality and wanted to capitalize on, you know, the social trends and all these kinds of things. And then that's when they really started to push media in a certain way. But it hasn't, I don't know if that guy's still there. I have no idea. And it just hasn't worked in the long run the way that it had for a little while when there was a lot of crises to jump on. And so for all I know, they're doing what a lot of nonprofits do, and they're just restructuring and they're cleaning off the things for financial reasons. Because quite frankly, like 1 Peter 5, for example, is a fully functioning website that has excellent commentary every single day. And they have something like 300,000 or 400,000 impressions a month, which is pretty common for that. Rorate Celli, places like that. You know, they could easily just sort of be whittling down and restructuring and saying, we're just going to focus on what kind of made us who we are. And maybe they lay off half the staff or something. That's possible too. But it doesn't mean that I don't know who they would replace John Henry with either. Also, I will say this as well. I was always nervous about the pressure from certain people in general in the Catholic sphere to adopt like the Benedict is Pope thesis, or Francis isn't really the Pope, or whatever, because I always knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's going to be a time when there's a new Pope and there's all these things, and that's a new landscape. And LifeSite really did air a lot of that stuff for a while. And so I think they kind of have maybe in a sense seen themselves caught with their proverbial pants down, and they attach themselves to the state of a contest thing, whatever. And I don't really know how you go forward from there. So I think they're having a sort of crisis to do with that.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to mean, you know, softening on calling out issues. It's just dealing with the fact that the landscape has changed. You know,
that was another thing that the source.
These are two different issues at hand. It's not all just, oh, you're going soft, you know, type of thing.
Well, that was the other thing the source said to me was the speculation about this being a move to enable LSN to go soft on church issues is not true. Mm-hmm. Though sadly, the LSN statement was not a good one. It sort of allowed the way the statement was written. They're suggesting sort of allowed the speculation to kind of go wild.
But so, you know what? That's going to be the way it is, because there's things they can't say. They can't tell you what happens in their meetings. Like there's actual confidentiality things. So, and also John Henry, man, that guy is like, he has given like 30 years of his life to this thing. You know, I've seen the toll it takes on his health. And when I texted him, I said, you deserve a rest, and I hope they're taking care of you. You know, like I understand there was a vote and stuff like that, right? But that man is like a hero, and what he's done. And
that's why my initial reaction was, oh, he's taking a sabbatical. I'm like, good for him. I'm like, that's great. He's getting some time off. I read it as though I thought that that's what he wanted. And then I had to go back and go, wait, hold on. No, wait. That's not what's happening here. Like something else is happening here. But I mean, on one hand, I'm glad for him.
Me too. But he's also like a very, very pious man. He's very pious. Like with John Henry, there is no faking it. That when that man is praying, it's like there could be an earthquake and he's not going to notice. And that's why he's so lovable. And so it could just as easily be, because we're all speculating here, but I want to speculate with the benefit of the doubt. It could just as easily be he's like, I'll leave it up to God's will and I'll do whatever the board wants, because he's that kind of person. Yeah. And he lives, you know, beautiful sort of Eastern Ontario lakes and woods and Algonquin Park and all these things. And I hope that I hope he gets some time to go touch grass and just live his life and breathe some fresh air, because it's a stressful environment in journalism.
Yeah, I got to spend a weekend with him a couple of months ago in Tennessee, and it was amazing. Praise be to God. It was my first real opportunity to sort of talk to him, you know, for real. I'd gone to the Rome conference back in 23, but this was my first encounter with just really getting to just talk to him. Great guy. What do you think will be next for him, though? So he rests a bit, he recoups or whatever, but, you know, is, again, going back to those sort of parallels, does he recreate something new, you know, the John Henry Weston, you know, thing, or what happens next for him?
No idea. Now, that being said, LifeSite is an organization that has like resources. So it's very different than having like a podcast. You know, you guys know you are part of an organization. You have resources at your disposal. This is why you have you have wonderful producer. You have 74 screens in front of you to make your show run. You have cameras that move. You have all these things. We're talking about a significant investment, which makes sense because this is part of a significant product that, you know, has a whole plan and all these kinds of things. Having your own podcast is a completely different ballgame. It's self-funded, all these kinds of things. Hence why I'm on the Mac here with with a lamp here for my light. And so it's a different thing. So it's a completely different animal. John Henry is like an old school, he's like almost like an old school TV guy. You know what I mean? So to make that jump into doing your own thing, it's a different beast. I don't know if he wants to do that. If I was out there and I was a Catholic media group, I would be wanting to see how he's feeling and if he wants to do some stuff, because he's really, really great in front of the camera and he's a really great presenter. But it's a tall order to want to create your own thing. And I just, one thing about John Henry is he's classy, and the whole time Michael Voris was going after LifeSite and stuff, his response was, we're going to pray for Michael Voris and all these kinds of things. He never got himself involved in all that. So I can't see him trying to do like a rival thing. I just think he's too moral for that sort of thing. So I don't know.
Well, I wasn't even thinking about rivals. I was just thinking about him, sort of getting started again, creating something that maybe he has more control over in the future. If anybody can pull off, an independent media outlet from scratch, clearly he's demonstrated he could do it. And
he could do it. Yeah,
he does. Now, the issue is, some people ask me, what about his YouTube channel? He's been blocked. I mean, YouTube deleted his channel. It wasn't just LifeSite News. They deleted John Henry Weston. I checked this morning just to see. So he'd have to create a whole nother channel and hopefully get that up off the ground. But I think we're going to see something from him within the next 6 months, right? We're going to see something from him. And I'm sure that when he does launch, whether it's a podcast or anything else, I bet a lot of people will come to support him on that. And I would certainly hope
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Janice, good morning to you. Says, hopefully we'll see John Henry West on his personal YouTube channel. Yeah, I think he's going to have to create something new, though, because they were getting deleted for violating community standards, but they don't ever tell you which standard you violate when they punish you. They keep it as vague as possible, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me, making it that much harder. Hey, Phil Gonzalez, good morning to you. Thank you for hanging out. Patty B, good morning to you. Appreciate you being here. I saw Rockstar's back. You've been watching my walk and talk videos, huh? Well, that good old footage of me wading through nasty, disgusting floodwater back in 2016. Yeah, that was... I never even told my wife. She didn't know about that till much later. I'm afraid I was going to have hepatitis B from all of that nastiness. But anyway, we survived it. Beverly, good morning. BP Coke, good morning to you. Appreciate you guys being on the team today. Dave's Jew 93, welcome back. Good morning to you. Great video, Kennedy. Flying Tigers Rob says, LifeSite News will likely lean more moderate now, like National Catholic Register, to broaden their demographic base. Anthony from Avoiding Babylon was talking about that. I don't think that's the move, and I don't think they're going to do that. It's like you said, Kennedy, earlier. How do you compete with Charlie Kirk? How do you compete with like the Blaze? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times I covered the Epstein story today. I cover politics all the time on this channel from my Catholic perspective. That content generally doesn't do very well. The kind of content that does very well for me is the content where I'm talking about Catholic issues. This will probably do very well. Talking about this issue of LifeSite News, not the Jeffrey Epstein story. So if I try to compete with those other outlets, there's no way I can win that. I don't have the credibility. I don't have the sources. I don't have none of that stuff. So you figure out what you're great at, and then you double down on that. That's how the content game is won. So I don't believe LifeSite News would be in their best interest to all of a sudden try to compete with the National Catholic Register. Like, they'll lose in that game. They don't have the reach that EWTN has. EWTN's a massive organization. It's the largest religious broadcaster in the planet. They have a massive reach. So why do that? Why bother with that? And this is something I used to say because I've been in the EWTN radio world for a very long time now, going back to 2013 full time, and even before that. And I've been saying it to all of my colleagues in all those years. When Church Militant was stirring the pot and they hated them, I said, hold on, Church Militant has a seat at the table. They're talking about issues that we don't talk about. I'm glad they're talking about them. Someone's got to talk about them. We're, hey, the psalm of the day, making you feel warm and fuzzy. That was our whole shtick. Never rock the boat, never say anything critical, just go along, make everybody feel good about it. That was our shtick in that world. Well, Church Militant was talking about more serious topics that nobody else was. I'm like, that's good. I'm glad they're doing it, because if they didn't, nobody would. And this LifeSite News is sort of in that same category, although more legitimate, in my opinion, in many ways than even Church Militant was. So I don't see them going that way. I think if they have anybody on staff still that has a clear thought in their head, I don't think they're gonna say, hey, we should go more mainstream. I just don't see it. I think they'll lose, and I think it'll become obvious very quickly. If LifeSite News is going to continue, then they have to figure out what they're great at and double down on that. Now, maybe there's an effort to be more balanced or more, fair, or maybe there's an argument for that. Like maybe if the argument is, well, we're too critical of Leo too soon. If that's the argument, which I don't actually think that's the argument, but if that's the argument, then maybe there's something to be said there. Like we can still call a spade, but not like do it with a sledgehammer, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, also, I don't see him changing. Go ahead.
So, well, every organization has a shelf life too. I mean, there's a certain point where people they're just not interested anymore in certain ways. That's just how it goes. I mean, nothing lasts forever, as they say. I mean, LifeSite has been around since before 2000. At one of the staff meetings, we had like screenshots from the archive of the old LifeSite site with like Netscape Navigator and stuff like that. I mean, they've been around for a long time.
That's great.
And everything has a shelf life. I mean, it's not like, again, this is the issue with the nonprofit and the religious world is difficult because it's like it's nonprofit for tax reasons and for funding reasons, but it's also like for profit, and it's attached to a mission that this is lay people. This isn't like of the church, so to speak, which I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that's what it is. And personalities, people retire. I mean, John Henry is no spring chicken. Steve Jalsavec is like in his mid to late 70s, and that transitionary period is tough for any organization. It just is. It doesn't matter if it's Buick or Ford or Apple or whatever. It's just, I don't know why I said Buick. I haven't thought about Buick in years. But it is what it is. So, I mean, there could be no conspiracy. There could be no ill will. There could be no nonsense. It's just, we're restructuring because we're in a transitionary period, because the writing's on the wall, because that's just what's happening. And you notice, like, again, we go back to these Charlie Kirk guys and stuff like that. Those guys will be gone one day. And those organizations that stay relevant, like these longtime TV broadcasters and stuff, I mean, they're soulless. That's the difficulty with trying to compete in this world of media. If you have morals, is that there's just certain things you're never going to be able to do because you don't want to go to hell. So these political organizations, it's like they latch themselves to whatever Republican is whatever, or whatever Democrat is whatever. And then they have this blend of crisis and apologetics and about face and whatever. And they're always going to do that. But you can't do that if you're a Catholic. So at a certain point, you might just kind of have to give up because there's no more juice to squeeze out of the lemon. And that's fine. But the temptation will always be to turn it into a quote unquote grift. And there's too much integrity over there to do that. So it just could be the shelf life, and that's fine too. There's no conspiracy involved in that.
No, it just is what it is. Patricia Parsons, yeah, we did talk about the Chris Jackson Substack. I've read it. We discussed it a little earlier in this conversation, and we don't. At least I speak for myself. I don't believe that Chris Jackson has got it all figured out. In fact, I was saying that I have sources that say that are telling me otherwise. He's sort of running with the emotional aspect of it rather than some of the facts on the ground. So it is, I guess, a more complicated issue than we'd like it to be, but it is what it is, and I think that's the bottom line. I don't want to see LifeSite News go away. I think they've done some great work. Praise be to God. I also want to see John Henry Weston, obviously provide for his family. I mean, that's a concern right now. What happens next for him? I'm very concerned about that. I want everything to work out for him and for Stephen Cox, by the way, who's also looking for work, so keep him in your prayers. But I was also told, just to reiterate, these two are not related by the source, that their departures are unrelated to each other. So people are linking them together like Chris Jackson is, but their source is telling me no. Mary says, I think many think that John Henry Weston was LifeSite News, just as James O'Keefe. Well, we talked about that too. And I'm kind of in that category. I don't see, I mean, he's been the front face of LifeSite News for so long, even though he's not a solo guy. There is a team, always has been a team. And in the beginning, he did most of the work maybe, but now there's an entire team that does a lot of that. But he's still the front facing guy. And so it's important for the organization to figure out very quickly now, how do they move forward? How do they communicate as clearly as possible to their audience what their mission is and what they'll be doing and how they're going to do it and why it matters to that audience? They've got to be able to do that quickly. And, it's not building a lot of confidence when you read the press release for this, because the press release, I think, drove the speculation. The way the press release is written, I think, is part of the problem, not part of the solution. So I think they got to turn that around fairly quickly. Now, they did say in this press release, they did acknowledge that there is a lot of speculation. He says, quote, "We acknowledge the significant online speculation surrounding this decision, but wish to clarify that much of it is inaccurate." So they're not denying necessarily, but they're saying, listen, you don't have the full story. And I don't think there's any reason not to believe them on that. Sort of like,
that's what I've been saying.
I mean, the Chris Jackson Substack basically throws that out the window and says, well, the real story is this. Why? Why should we assume that they're lying to us here? I don't think there's anything to believe or to make the assumption that they're not telling us the truth. They are. They're saying, hey, there's things you don't know. It's not as bad as you think it is. There's other factors that you are unaware of. Okay, I guess. I mean, I want to know what those are, but I guess fair enough.
Yeah, you can't make you got to be careful with. Everyone has to be careful with assumptions. I don't care if you're left wing or right wing. It's like the ASS, assuming makes an ASS out of you and me kind of thing.
Someone recently told me that way. I forget who it was.
Well, there you go. God did prophesy through a donkey, so you're in good company. But yeah, and they can't replace John Henry though with anyone. Like they can't. You can't just get rid of the guy and say, by the way, here's a new guy. Like him just as much. It's not going to happen. So my gut tells me revenue is down because I can see that traffic towards this stuff is down just by numbers that you can see through metrics that if you know what you're looking for, you can look for it. I can see that. And so, I mean, maybe they're, I mean, if they're trying to bring in another guy to be the JH, I think that's very unwise. My gut tells me they're restructuring and they're going to sort of go back to what they always did before the media side became a huge part of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are a number of layoffs.
Okay, so then there's a parallel.
Which is,
now
again,
to
not
CNN.
necessarily. It's not evil necessarily. It's not evil necessarily. It's just what happens sometimes.
Yeah, it's just practical business. Okay, but now I see a parallel to CNN after Trump lost the 2020 election. CNN was like, "We made our living off of Trump. Now we don't have a Trump. What do we do?" And then they started laying off people, right? So their staff was being shed like crazy, and because their revenues were down and their viewership was down. They survived it because they're a big organization. Maybe they can absorb a big punch like that. But can LifeSite News, can they shift to survive if they were living off of the Francis Pontificate? I guess is my question. And you seem to be thinking maybe not.
No one can. This is why, like, so when I was a school teacher, and then I didn't want to be a communist COVIDian jackboot or whatever, so I decided
Seems
to
unreasonable of you.
So I transitioned into other, and I saw the writing on the wall, and I said, okay, I got to get out of this. And I had sort of a soft landing, and then Fatima Center asks me to make videos because I had been writing a weekly blog for them, and it was very gracious of them. And I said, sure, I'll do that, you know. And then because of that time, it's like if you put COVID, Great Reset, and Fatima in the title of any video, it was like 100,000 views just for showing up, you know. Right. And that was just how it was. And then I just sort of realized, I said, for whatever reason, I said, this isn't going to last forever. And so I got a stable job, like a stable income, working for LifeSite as a journalist. I was very grateful. They were very good to me. I have no complaints. You know, it was a good place to work. I learned a ton, especially Dorothy McLean, one of the editors over there. I used to call her Professor McLean. She's actually like, I mean, she's the kind of woman as far as her literary chops, like Penguin Books could pick her up and say, you know, edit the bestsellers and whatever. And she could do that. She's a legitimate bona fide.
She's amazing.
English
I get to hang out with her in Rome.
She's the best. But she's also just a faithful, traditionally minded Catholic woman. So she just wanted to do something that her conscience could handle. So that's why she would do that, you know, and that makes sense. But I learned a ton from her. And then, you know, circumstances in my own life, largely my wife, when she got hurt, I had to take a leave of absence, take care of her and the children and whatnot. She's fine now, but it was a rough time. And I just, you know, reassess things as you do. You got to move on sometimes. And that's what I had to do. And, but I realized when I started doing the YouTube thing, I was like, you know, friends of mine said, do the Kennedy Report and do the news stuff. And I was like, okay, because that's kind of what I was doing with Fatima Center. And so I did. And I just thought to myself, there is no way that I can do this. I don't have the stomach for it. I can't do the whole breaking news thing. Some people can, and that's great. I just don't have the stomach for it. And I realized I had to, in a sense, kind of like restructure my expectations, what sort of thing I wanted to do. So I decided it's like, all I want to talk about is traditional Catholicism, which is a big enough thing, but it's niche. And I said, that's fine. I'm just going to find the niche, and I'm going to be in that niche and be happy about it. And I'm very happy I did that personally, because I've seen, you know, a variety of online Catholic creators and stuff and organizations rise and fall because they were attached to the, you know, if Pope Francis bleeds, it leads. And that is gone. And people get tired of things. And people have short attention spans. So you have to, and then you look at people who are on the ascendancy, like Dr. Kwasniewski, his Substack is like a major bestseller on Substack, and he talks about the liturgy 17 times a day. You know, I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying that's what he does, and it's amazing. And he doesn't have to rely on a news cycle because he has not made that his audience, and that's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have to find our piece of the puzzle, of the overall Catholic puzzle, and how we best serve, and then we need to just double down on that, whatever that is. And certainly I think there's still a role for John Henry Weston. I think there's still a role for Stephen Cox. And I'm going to pray and support them, obviously, when they start to figure out what comes next for them. I also would support LifeSite News. I don't think you should be turning your back on LifeSite News or being angry at them or whatever and sort of compounding this problem. I think it would be a sad day for LifeSite News to no longer exist in the Catholic media world. I think that would be a loss for our team.
Yep.
So we need to keep them. We need to keep them going. I don't know all the details, and I'm not going to press my source for all the juicy details either, because I don't want to put them in any situation publicly. I don't think that'd be fair to them. So just keep everybody in our prayers today for that. But we're going to wrap this up. Kennedy Hall, so good to hang out with you, my friend. Thanks for hanging out. You know, I think you and I need to do a celebrity Catholic boxing match for charity.
Okay.
You box, I box. You're young, I'm old, so you have the huge advantage over me. But I think it'd be fun to do at a men's conference. Good sportsmanship. It'd be a good time. I think guys would love it. Sometime you and I should arrange that. It'd be a good time.
Yeah, but we got to have, I mean, I like you too much to punch you in the face, Joe. So
we'll wear the helmets. Kennedy, I served in the Marine Corps. My sons punch me in the face. We kickbox here at the house. So I get punched in the face quite frequently. You know, we'll put the helmets on. We'll put the mouth guards. We'll have all of the accoutrement. We'll do it. We're not going to kill each other. We're just going to have a good time with it and do it for We'll have to come up with some good charity to do it for. It'd be fun.
We're not going shirtless though. We're wearing the singlets. We're not going shirtless.
Thank you. That was going to be one of my also. It's like definitely not going to go shirtless on the deal. But we'd have a fun time doing it. It would be fun for all, hanging out, being men, and showing good sportsmanship. I think that would be a nice opportunity. So let's work on that sometime. But enjoy your travel. Okay. Enjoy keeping your shoes on through TSA. It's a whole new, brand new world when we can keep our shoes on. Let's work on the belts next. Thanks for your comments on LifeSite News. You weren't planning on that, but I was glad we got into it because everybody's asking about it. But God love you, Kennedy Hall. Make sure to check out his meretradition.substack.com website. We'll put a link to it in the show notes, and we'll be back tomorrow. I'm trying to get Eric Ybarra on the team to talk about the East-West divide. Not a guarantee, but let's pray it happens. We'll tune in tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, to find out what comes next. God love you.